Among my many professions and all the interests that I've pursued over the years as an astronomer, as a science fiction author, pundit, the common theme has been looking outward, beyond our present horizon. And one of the main ways in which we look outward is we look up. People of my generation learned that the sky is not the limit. And so our imaginations plunged onward into the cosmos. At first through the science fiction literature that I write, science fiction novels, and then Hollywood caught on and pretty much took over the whole field, for well or ill. But one of the common themes that I get from people, the way we connect, even across disagreements that span the left-right political axis and all these other things, is wondering what happened to the adventure in space. My own kids are much less interested in outer space than I was back during the Sputnik and Apollo eras. So what are the prospects? Well, to put it in perspective, Norman Mailer wrote a book called A Fire Upon the Moon back during the Apollo era. And he started out a little hostile because he was a typical New York liberal, opposed to the military, and the military had associations with all the rockets and NASA. He started writing this book and was reluctantly drawn into feeling connected, intensely connected to the space program. And he realized, in a sense of awe, that they were accomplishing not one, but two bona fide religion-level miracles. One, they were actually going to the moon. He hadn't really thought of it before, the moon. And the second bona fide miracle, which impressed him even more, they were managing to make it boring. Have any of you tuned into the NASA channel? Look, we found out that outer space was a very different frontier than the previous frontiers. The frontier of the ocean, for example. Because the ocean could be spanned by small groups. Even a fisherman might be the first to find, say, the Canary Islands. Not so with space. Same thing happened with the great era of exploring the air, airplanes. What happened was there was a large ramp-up in which private individuals or groups of individuals could participate, could add little bits to the exploration. But the space program was different. The space program was hard. It had to be done by skilled professionals, by nations, with all the public watching. When Columbus came back from his first expedition, bringing treasures of the New World and wonders, they went straight to the palace, and the people had to hear information about it trickling down. When we sent space probes to discover treasures, magnificent moons of Jupiter, volcanoes, spewing sulfur from Io and water ice from Enceladus, the first persons to hear about it were housewives vacuuming at home watching TV, PBS or the NASA channel. That's good, but it also made it all seem mundane. None of the science fiction depictions of going to the moon ever predicted that it would be televised. How much more romantic it would have been if we had been listening to crackling little radio sets for Neil Armstrong's voice without it seeming so professional, so cold. And yet this coldness was necessary because we demand results. Look at how the space program was knocked back with the loss of just 2 vehicles, 2 expensive space shuttles. But the point is, all previous endeavors in exploration took heavy losses too. at much higher rates. If we're going to be having a mature frontier, one where we're really replicating what our ancestors did, we have to get to the point where we can start taking losses, where so much is going on that the news of this loss or that loss comes in the wash. It's a tragedy, but it doesn't make us stumble and stop. So, where are the options? Well, first option is, if we're going to open up space more, it's got to be more commercial. And we're seeing that with things like Bert Rutan's work with the Virgin company, with Richard Branson, in making suborbital launches that the rich can buy, therefore siphoning off some of their excess lucre into an activity that will enhance all of humanity. Certainly the Obama administration's shift toward commercial spaceflight is going to give a boost to alternative methods of getting into space that might decrease the cost of pound per orbit. And that will open up all the possibilities. In another of these videos, I talked about solar sail and tethered-based systems that might enhance our ability to send expeditions to Mars. I also discussed the incentive of wealth, possibly to be derived by mining the asteroids. Over the long run, I get a lot of messages from people asking, what about warp drive? When are we going to get warp drive? Why aren't NASA or the universities investing in this or that or the other storied element of warp drive? Well, I'm afraid a lot of these stories are very logical sounding when they are purveyed by somebody like Glenn Beck and a chalkboard. They can make it seem like there's something there. I'm speaking to you as a physicist, an astrophysicist, and a science fiction author who uses warp drive in his stories all the time. To the best of our knowledge, there are some possible doors in physics through which our descendants might be able to find such chinks in the rules that Einstein showed us. But to the best of my knowledge, there is no evidence whatsoever in modern physics or in any experiment that shows that these shadows, these places where possibilities might exist, are anything more than shadows. This is one reason why some of the most advanced science fiction, why the really exploratory science fiction authors have been moving away from warp drive. I still use it in my space operas, but in the other science fiction that I write, I'm trying to do without it. And there's a reason for this. Even if there's a possibility of warp drive, even if there's a possibility of all these other amazing things, I hear about them all the time from my friends who are obsessed with the singularity, how we're all going to be cybernetically amplified or become immortal or become gods within 25 years. That's nice. It might even happen. But I don't think that's our business. It may shock you to know that I don't think that's our job. Our children will be much wiser than better than us at dealing with issues like this, at meeting extraterrestrials, for example, or figuring out warp drive, or taking on the powers of gods. Our job is to make a sane and decent world with enough of the world's children growing up better than us, so that then when they get these powers, they'll be wise enough to deal with them. We have enough on our plate. If the godlike powers come, if the singularity comes, if warp drive comes, terrific. I'm there. But we have serious business on our plate. And think about it. If we manage to make a sane, decent humanity with an Earth that's been saved, and the beginnings of a real interplanetary economy that's getting wealth generated enough so that we know we'll stay in space, then we'll have done our job. And we'll have turned cavemen into space beings. And all future generations will thank us.